to happen, like for instance in Abu Dhabi, if we could sequence every single person in Abu Dhabi and at the same time have the Wakaya project and connect all that together in a way that was ethically sound and didn't infringe upon people's privacy, what we would learn would dramatically improve the lives of everybody here. It would change the way we do healthcare. So it becomes a very subtle balance between doing it for good and doing it for profit. Now you can be profitable and good, that's true, but it's a bigger question than I've got an answer to. I think that GINA, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, doesn't go far enough. I would like for it to cover more than just health insurance, but I'm also worrisome about how far it should go. And you know, I think it can go too far. I think there are things that we should use genetics for. You want me to say more about that? We'll talk after.
Are there other questions? Yes. Back over here. Yes.
How many genes so far have been discovered for the human genome? And how long do you think it's going to take for us, each of us, to take his human genome map in his pocket? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. How many genes do you think there are that makes up a human? Everybody think of a number in their mind. All right, now anybody want to give me one? 30,000. Somebody knows their stuff over there. So somewhere about 28, 30,000, depending on how you define a gene. So there's something like 30,000 genes. If you look at the genome at large, those genes are only covering 3 or 4% of the genome. The rest of the genome is doing what we used to think was junk, nothing, but now we understand that it's doing lots of stuff, but it's not genes. Now, the second question I believe you asked was how long until everybody here has their genome sequenced? I think in this room, in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE, it will be sooner than in the rest of the world. That's what I think. I think by 2020, 2025, a significant part of the first world will have their genome sequenced. I think you guys, it will happen faster.
Thank you. I would just like to ask a question. Like we have looked at a number of combinations and some of the things developed and researched and found certain pieces are missing. Can we maybe have a definition of what ideal genome is?
No. No. I mean, you know, so you quickly get to eugenics there, right? And for those of you who don't know what eugenics is, it's you know what I describe what we do with plants, where we grow some and we throw some out. It's doing the same thing with humans. We don't necessarily want to go there, but you can certainly see that there are. Has anybody seen the movie Gattaca? Yeah. So there are these sort of traits that seem desirable from a lot of perspectives, performance, intelligence, but that's one of those areas where I would like for that discussion to take a few hundred years, because I think it's a very slippery slope that we can go down. Now we have the technology to do it, but I'm glad we're not doing it yet, at least not that I'm aware of.
What I'm worried about is that with these scenarios that you're giving, they're extremely realistic. But at the same time, that I'm worried that society would do a knee-jerk and actually go against the technology, the same way that it happened with the stem cells.
Yeah.
It became a highly politicized ethical issue rather than a scientific issue. So scientists do it for the sake of science and the better of society, of course, but how do you control for that?
I think you do. Again, not you, Dr. Nicholas, but consumers do. Now that I've shared with you everything that could go wrong, do you still want to have your cancer genome sequenced? I still do, absolutely. Because at the end, I'm going to get that knowledge or I'm going to die. People who are desperate will find ways to get access to the technology. And you see the same thing with stem cells, and you'll see it here as well. I had a lovely man from Australia call me up. He has a son who has an undiagnosed form of leukodystrophy. Leukodystrophy, for those of you who don't know, is a disease that causes your white matter to just sort of fall apart. And when you have it, you don't live past the 2 or 3 years old. It's nasty. Now there's 20 or 30 different kinds of leukodystrophy, and this little boy has one of them, but they keep trekking and they can't figure out which one. It isn't any of them. So this guy, not rich, middle-class guy, he spends $50,000 to get the genomes of his son sequenced and the genome of him and his wife sequenced. So, you know, that if it were more difficult for him to have found it, he would have spent more money to have found it. But I don't think that, I think that the wave of consumer need will overcome the potential resistance. And I also think, just thinking broadly, I haven't put an awful lot of thought into this, but thinking broadly about the sort of the religious bias in some of the cultural moves, certainly in the United States, against stem cells, I think they're less likely to happen here because we're not talking about reproduction. So, you know, I think it's a complicated question, but I do think that if we can get the message out that this is happening and that there's real benefit, and you all go home and you tell your family and friends about this, and you read up and you understand that it's going on, then we can do something with it and it can be good, and we don't have to let the sort of forces of resistance of change keep it under control, because it's really important that it advances.
Many thanks for your talk. Just a question. Could you elaborate about the state of the militarization of this technology? To what extent are we about to discriminate in terms of who we might kill or not?
Yeah. I don't have any top secret clearance, but we do get calls from the military. And they're non-confidential, which means I can tell you everything, and I'm about to. The military is interested in using this technology primarily for one thing, maybe two. Biological warfare is something that people are very concerned about. Just in the same way that I can take a sample of my blood and I can sequence all the DNA in it, I could take a sample of dirt and purify the DNA and sequence it all. And what I would find in a teaspoon of dirt is an incredibly rich mixture of life, all sorts of microorganisms in there. And using the same technologies, I could figure out which organisms are in there. So I know that governments are using this technology to take samples of air on a regular basis, militaries on a regular basis, to see what is happening in there, what microbial community is living, to be able to detect slight changes, the sort of the wild viral type that's going to do something wrong. I suspect, although I don't know, that there's plenty of genetic research going on in things like bird flus and the like, to try to engineer bacterial and viral life forms that could be used in combat. Just like they did in nuclear. Again, I'm not sure that that risk outweighs the benefit, but I take your question, and it's a profound one.
Right here in the center aisle.
Thank you very much indeed, very stimulating.
Thank you.
I want to ask you, aside from spreading the message of wake up, genome revolution, what does it take for UAE, for example, to establish a center of genome, and what steps are you proposing from the beginning, and what kind of sequences we start with? Do we start like in the Saudi Arabian experiment or other experiments? And the other question is, what kind of patent system do we have in the world today for this?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And the second one's something I know a lot about. You asked for what kind of patent system? Yeah. Did you know that 20% of the human genome is patented? So how do you do that? How do you patent a genome? Isn't it something that occurs naturally? Yeah, it does. So they do this funny legal thing where they say, okay, fine. We're not actually patenting the genome, but we're patenting any isolation of DNA that you can make off of the genome, which is essentially the same thing. So in this talk, just by showing these things to you, I have violated probably 50 patents. Now, and I do that on a regular basis because the companies that really want to protect their portion or portions of the genome are doing so because they want to protect a revenue stream. And I guarantee you, none of you are going to rush up here and give me $1 million because I just told you this information. If I'm wrong, come see me after class. So yeah, patents are a very interesting issue. In the United States, there's a Supreme Court case that's coming around that will look again at the issue of whether genes are patentable, but I suspect it will hold that indeed they are patentable. Patents are a good thing as well. If you are a pharmaceutical company and it costs you $4 billion to develop a drug and it takes 12 years, you'd like to have some confidence that there's at least 5 years of protection after you develop the drug, which is 90% likely not to be developed because it will fail along the way. So they're good as well. As to your first question, I think you guys have all of the pieces in place. I mean, I think, you know, you've got the incredible sort of healthcare brain and arm of Mubadala. You've got rich connections with industry across the planet, the best scientific advisors, the health HAAD that we visited today has a very forward-looking vision. And I think if you want to help here, then what you do is you go and you give your support to those two organizations. And also, if you're young, then you apply for a acceptance into Khalifa University's biomedical engineering program.
Good. I was just going to have to mention that, but I'm glad you got that. One last question.
Thank you. Semi Hisham from Mubadala Healthcare.
Okay. Well,
thank you for the compliment, by the way. I would like to underline the fact that this genomic revolution is probably no different than any other revolution which took place in human history, in terms of inhabiting the good and bad, yin and yang, in a way.
Yeah.
When firearms were invented, it was invented for protection, but it was also used to kill people. Nuclear energy versus nuclear arms. I don't think it's any different. We are all awakened to it, I believe, but the question comes when and how to tackle the issues to regulate this. Still, in this part of the world, including my own country, everybody believes in internet usage. I'm from Turkey. It has the third highest number of Facebook users, but it bans YouTube for watching videos. So I think there will be different perspectives in tackling the issues you have mentioned. And there's no right recipe, there is no role model in this field because it's so new. So what do you think are like maybe key 3 priorities for a society to tackle the balance between yin and yang?
Okay, that's a great question. If you'll allow me, I'm going to disagree first with a tiny piece of your premise, but it doesn't invalidate the question. You mentioned firearms and you mentioned nuclear energy, protection, and so on. Both of those revolutions were really designed to kill people, whereas genomics were ultimately, right? Genomics were designed to understand something else. Having said that, they both have, all 3 have great uses. Nuclear energy is a very important energy source, firearms are a very important deterrent, and genomes are a very important source of information about human biology. I think that I love the idea that everybody and every society gets to take their own approach, their own try at this, and I think that's important. I think that's critical, because some of them are going to fail and some of them are going to succeed, and then the world will be able to learn from the successes and failures. And so I like that. That makes a lot of sense. And the advice that I would give in terms of making sure that as a society, whichever society you're in, you do this as well as you can, is A, educate people as to what's going on and what this means so that the people have some voice in what's happening with their own health information. B, informed consent is really important. For those of you who don't understand informed consent, when you go to the doctor and you give them a sample of DNA and they sequence it, you generally, in most societies, have to consent to their doing that. You sign something which says, yeah, that's okay, you can do that. In some cases, that consent can be very simple, like, yeah, that's fine, you can do that, and then they can take that data and they can go and do whatever they want, including, selling it to your enemy, right? In other cases, that consent is very long and extended. It takes a week of sitting down and educating. Look, we're going to look at your genome. Let me share with you all the things that could happen. We could find something in your genome that suggests that you're going to get Alzheimer's at a very young age. What do you want to do about that? And so they go through every single disease, and it takes a long time. So I think coming up with a good informed consent policy is another really important thing. No matter what you try to do, that one is a really important thing. Education, informed consent, and privacy. I think, again, I have a bias. I'm clearly coming from the Western Hemisphere, clearly a liberal American, I admit, but I think that privacy is something that you want to start with as a right, and you can give it away through informed consent. For instance, if somebody wanted to pay for it right now, I'd happily let you take my genome and run with it. I'd be really interested in what was going on there. So I'd be willing to give away the privacy of my genome, but I'd like to have the choice to do it. So those are the three things that I think are important. And then as for the society and the government, well, there's clearly huge utility in having this information to lower healthcare costs, to remove type 2 diabetes in the UAE, just take it away. There's a lot that can be done. And so I strongly encourage it all to happen. And I think I love your comment that everybody can take their own approach at it. Thanks.
So we'll take one last question. We have to take one question from a student.
Hello, this is Sarah Hamoud, a biomedical engineer from Khalifa University. So we're mainly having a project in the university, and we were just wondering about a point. If we can take the genome of the parents and then use it to do genetic therapy for the babies. So is it possible in the future, or it's hard?
It's actually possible now in some ways, but it requires that you have to, see, the problem is your genome's copied in every single cell in your body, as you know. So if I want to change it, do some genetic therapy on my genome, I have to do it like a few billion times because I've got lots of cells. In a baby, you still all have lots of cells. So the only thing that you can really do is mess with the single-celled embryo. There are technologies to do that even today. The issue is not really technology there, it's culture. I know, for instance, in my country, that would never fly. That's just can't do it. Not allowed to touch that stuff. If the cultural norms were different, and I don't know what they are here, there's nothing really, there's technology that can enable you to do this now. So it's about culture, not about technology.
You could tell the students in the audience, they're the ones taking the quick notes for their project. That's what he just answered. So, an inspiring talk and wonderful answers to these questions, and you've left us all with a lot to think about. So if we could thank our speaker one more time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's thought-provoking discussion, very interesting. In itself, 3 parts. You took us from the technical aspect to the economic, to the social implication, and we are talking about revolutions, and there is always a thermidor after all revolution, and so setbacks that was illuminated by the gentleman toward the end, so it was very appropriate. Thank you very much. I feel that we almost need another talk, another day, another evening, just to focus on some of those regulatory processes. I'm happy that we're in the age of occupying Wall Street to talk about regulatory mechanism, and I will end it there. Just business items. Please note we have a reception at the end of the lecture, so please join all of us. I know you need some protein. We've been talking about the sequencing of protein, so do not forget your own proteins at the end of this talk. I want also to thank all of you for coming And I don't want to forget wonderful work of the marketing team. You should always come together at the end and indulge my tempestuous mood. So thank you for all that. And Beth as well, who is the coordinator here, has done an excellent job. So thank you for all this. And before the end, I would like to invite our president to the podium and to deliver our thanks and our present to the speaker.
Thank you. So I should stay.
So you should stay just for a minute. And then we all go to the...
Which I hope you have. I knew I forgot something. Just sort of an informal tradition to leave you something that remember us by. Thank you very much.
I will remember.
It was really great.
Thank you.
Really great.
Thank you. Let's shake again.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, let's eat. Thank you, guys.